Here we are with our perfect piece of wood that we planed out of a pretty crude board. And we've marked it. It's perfectly flat, perfectly straight, perfectly square corners and ends. Just a marvel of perfection. But to be useful, we got to be able to join it to other pieces of wood. And we looked at that another time. And one way of doing it is to create rabbet joints. A rabbet is simply a bit of wood removed on the edge or on the end of a board. And we looked at how to do that with the most simple of tools. It's something that anyone can do. And what this does allows us to take our pieces of wood, we can join them together as, for say, a drawer front or the back of a cabinet or anything of that nature. But sometimes we don't want to join wood just at the end or just at the edge. Maybe sometimes we need to, instead of having this sort of thing, we need to join it right here. Maybe like a bookcase, you might want to put the shelves to fit on the sides. Or maybe you need to join a board like this for dividers in a drawer bottom or something of that nature. How are you going to do that? Well, I want to show you how to do it with the very simplest of tools, something we will all have. Now the first thing is just to recognize that all we're going to do is take these rabbets and we're going to move them in to the center of the board. We're going from the coastlands to the inlands. Now, just as there were kind of different ways of doing it, either across the grain or with the grain, we have the same situation here. So maybe the first thing we'll do is we'll just fit our perfect piece of wood into this piece of wood, just like you would for a bookcase. So, now the first thing, we need a square. And you need a knife. It's important to mark with a knife whenever you can, rather than with a pencil. Pencils are very handy, they're important, but if you're going to remove wood, a knife will sever the fibers. Well, let's just pick a spot. Any spot will do. We're just going to mark, just cut straight across. Now, this is the perfect piece of wood we want to let in here. So we'll just have to just line it up carefully, carefully. Mark it on the other side. And use our square again. Now, you can see those two lines. What we want to do is take the wood out between those two lines. And when you mark these out, it's okay to mark it just a tiny bit tight. You don't want it too sloppy. Now, having said that, well, we'll see if it works. We'll see. Now, how deep are we going to make our groove across the grain? Well, let's try to make it about as deeply as we made the rabbet. So how are you going to figure that? You know, trusty marking gauge. You set it so it's the same. We'll just make a line. I'm not going to be neat. We'll just make a line, square down to it. Now we'll use a pencil. We'll just mark this. That's what's got to come out. And I'll just darken this so you can see what we're doing. Now the easiest way to do this is actually just take a saw and cut down as far as you need to go. Now, I'm going to use these holdfasts to hold my piece of wood in place. just take my knife and just deepen that line and just cut a little shaving out. You don't really have to do this, but doing this, getting rid of that, gives me a place to set my saw blade. So I can set the saw blade right into there. You have to do this twice. You have to cut both sides. Now I have a nice old back saw that someone traded a modern saw for. Heavy brass back, it's a lovely saw. It says made for use. But use whatever saw you've got. Don't be putting off the work just because you don't have all the toys. There, it's all cut out. Now you need a chisel. And the chisel just has to be narrow enough to fit between the two sides. Now, let's see. I'll take a different mallet. Now what I find useful is when you're chipping out things like this, don't start on the edge nearest to you unless you're really sure which way the grain goes, because if it's wrong, you might hit here and it chips out too deeply. The easiest thing is to start on the far side and just work your way backwards. Now if you don't have mallets and that sort of thing, use a hammer, whatever it takes. Just get started. When you get close to the bottom, turn the chisel over so the flat side is down and just nibble down. Now when you get to the bottom, you might have to sever the fibers. There we go. Let's take this out of here. If you were building a bookcase, that would hold the side and the shelves, and they would hold a tremendous amount of weight. Now, mine's a little sloppy. I knew I marked that a little heavy. But that's basically what it is. See, it's like a rabbit across the end, only we moved it into the center. Now this is not actually called a groove. This has a special name in woodworking. It's called a dado. So that's a groove across the grain is a dado. But you can see this is pretty simple stuff. Don't ever hesitate to try this stuff just because you don't have all the specialized tools, okay? Now that's one type of groove. It matches. But what about along the length? You remember when we cut the rabbit that cutting the rabbit along the length was a little bit of a different experience from cutting it across the end grain. So, what if we wanted to set in like so? Well, it's basically the same procedure. We need to mark out where our groove is going to go, and then we need to get rid of the wood in there. So, as you know, the easiest way to mark a line parallel to an edge is with a trusty marking gauge. And remember, you can never have too many of these. So I've actually marked a spot here where I want the groove. And I've set my marking gauges. So we just have to mark it out. That's one side. That's the other side. So there's our groove. Now I'm going to darken that with a pencil. There. That's what has to come out. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to do it the same way. But first we'll just have to fasten this down. Let's see if we get a little. And if you don't have hold fast, you can devise some way of doing it. And we use the same tool, just a chisel. Fits between the groove. And we just, again, start away from you and work back to where you've got to go. Okay. Now I've been chipping this out for a couple of minutes. Just clean it up a little bit. Maybe clean out here. Let's try it out. Take our perfect piece of wood. Let's see. Just a tad. Just a little more cleaning up. Just get it right into that gauge line. Sound. Oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. Well, there you go. Maybe that's how a drawer bottom goes into the side of a drawer, a divider in a cabinet. When the wood fits together like this, it's quality, it's strength, and you're on your way doing some pretty fine work, my friend. Some pretty fine work. So, don't be discouraged. Start with what you've got. Put your hand to it. Amaze yourself. See you next time.